Hello, my name is Tony. If memory serves, I saw the trailer for Cry of the Banshee around 71 and then watched the film itself in late 72. Moment the trailer flickered, crackled and stuttered before my eager little eyes, I knew this was a film I wanted to see. When you're a kid, you're really fucking stupid. Easily taken in, easily influenced, quick to buy into the pitch. Reality bites though, as it turns out, because when I watched it in all its glorious entirety, I remember thinking, this is not all that good. Oh, another thing, when you're a kid, you're a master of understatement. Cry of the Banshee was an American International Pictures movie, but filmed in Britain. AIP had produced the Roger Corman-directed Edgar Allan Poe films in the early to mid-60s. They seemed to feel this gave them the right to slap Poe's name on any of their products, even if it had sweet FA to do with him. Cry of the Banshee is attributed to Poe on the promotional media and contains snatches of one of his poetic works. There is no real connection. To direct, AIP wheeled in one-man turkey processing plant Gordon Hessler, along with his feather-plucking script-writing sidekick Christopher Wicking. The original screenplay was penned by Tim Kelly, who later went on to hack out blaxploitation zombie disaster Sugar Hill in 1974. Not sure what happened to him after that. Hopefully he was either struck by the realization that a career in screenwriting was not for him, or struck by lightning and burned to a crisp. I'll take either one. What's the deal then? Well, it's Elizabethan England, and the Lord of the Manor and local magistrate Lord Edward Whitman Vincent Price is rooting out witches in and around the rural crap hole over which he presides. Up before him first is Margaret, who refuses to confess. She gets her bodice ripped open so her baps are exposed. Then she's branded with a big H for heretic. She's whipped through the village street, it's a small place, and put in stocks and pelted with rotten fruit and vegetables by the fun-loving locals, baps still prominently exposed. Later that night, Whitman holds a feast. In attendance are his son Sean Stephen Chase, Fruit Loop wife Lady Patricia Essie Pearson, and daughter Maureen the radiant Hilary Dwyer. A village boy and girl are brought in for the entertainment of the revellers. Both are accused of witchcraft and tormented. The girl is sexually molested, and when the boy tries to intervene, he is knifed by Whitman. The girl attacks Whitman with a fork and is shot. His daughter is repulsed and his fragile wife emotionally traumatized, shouting that Whitman is a murderer. Nothing like stating the fucking obvious. You just saw him murder someone, so, sort of goes without saying. Sean is ordered to escort his stepmother to a room where he kindly undoes her bodice so her baps are exposed and rapes her. These people really know how to throw a party. Although it does end on something of a downer because there's a wolf howling outside and some sheep get killed. A mad dog must be on the loose, it is reasoned, and needs killing, and by the way, all these witches out there need to be brought to book. In the local tavern, Sean and his cronies sexually molest barmaid Bess, Jan Rossini, undoing her bodice so her baps are exposed. They turn their attentions to Maggie, Quinn O'Hara, and accuse her of witchcraft. They rip off her bodice so her baps are exposed. I don't know about you, but I'm beginning to detect an emerging pattern in the treatment of the women in this film. One of arbitrary bodice removal and bap exposure by the men. Are you getting the same impression, or is it just me? The wolf howls sporadically and Vince thinks it's a banshee. It isn't, because traditionally speaking, a banshee is a female spirit in Irish folklore who signals the impending death of a family member by wailing, shrieking or keening despairingly, a response not dissimilar to most of the women who meet me. Bit of background. Servant Roderick Patrick Mower lives with the Whitmans. He was found by Lady Patricia as a boy wandering aimlessly in the woods and she took him in. He had an oversized amulet around his neck, large enough to cause most young children to overbalance and face-plant the greenery. He continues to wear it as an adult and it still looks fucking big on him. Roderick has a talent for calming wild animals, not to mention Lady Patricia when she's in one of her frequent and alarmingly deranged moods. Maureen is in love with him and they've been going at it hammer and tongs. We know he's different to the other men around the joint because he doesn't rip off her bodice and expose her baps. She's happy enough doing that herself away from the camera. Tasteful for once. Roderick, however, is a werewolf. Ain't there always a fucking downside? Whitman's other son, Harry Carl Rigg, arrives home from Cambridge with new village priest Father Tom, Marshall Jones. They find Whitman's on a full-blown crusade to hunt down witches. The High Priestess of the Witches, Una, played by German silent film actress Elizabeth Bergner, is presiding over a pagan ceremony in the woods. Flower children, semi-clothed in flowing white, cavort and caper around a naked girl on an altar, whilst Una chants fluent gibberish. Whitman leads an attack on the coven, killing some of them and banishing Una and her remaining cabal to the hills. Una vows revenge. Whitman and some of his pals corner a rabid dog. Next thing you know, the dog's head is on a spike at another banquet round at Whitman's place. The howling wolf keeps on howling though. Sean and his pals are out at night when they get separated, and Sean is attacked by a furry beast that separates him from half of his face. Una has taken control of Roderick the werewolf with her magical ways, and he is now her instrument of vengeance. Next, Lady Patricia gets the werewolf treatment, and her mental health problems are cured by her now being dead. This policy of alleviating mental health issues through dying has been a cornerstone of community care in the UK ever since. Next on Una's list is Maureen. She sends Roderick to kill her, which just goes to prove that love is no protection against a satanically mind-controlled lycanthrope. Whitman intervenes and Roderick turns his attention on him, and so begins a fight to the death. Una and her followers have not gone to the hills as ordered, but have instead taken up residence in the caves beneath the village cemetery. Harry and Father Tom find them there, where Harry slits Una's throat. It was bound to happen, sooner or later. These are the jokes, folks. Back at the Whitman homestead, the fight between Roderick and his lordship continues, until Maureen, who has found a fucking big blunderbuss lying around, blasts Roderick in the face. Hooray! The beast is dead, and the curse is lifted. Whitman decides to cut his losses and skip town with remaining offspring Harry and Maureen. He orders his coachman, a mentally challenged dick aptly named Bully Boy, to stop off at the cemetery on the way so he can look upon Roderick's corpse one last time before he is buried. Whitman finds the coffin to be empty. Climbing back on board the coach, he also finds Harry and Maureen to have been mauled to death. The coach speeds off, driven by a hooded man, who is revealed to be Roderick, the hapless Bully Boy, mutilated and dead at his feet.
Bully Boy! Bully Boy! Bully Boy!
Whitman shouts repeatedly, but Bully Boy cannot hear, because he's wolf bait. The end. I'll start with the adage, so bad it's good. Or rather, I won't, because it's not really. More, so bad it isn't good at all. The script and dialogue are uniformly awful, which is the most consistent thing about it. If the acting had been better, more convincing, then that might have elevated the profile somewhat, but the performances are lackluster at best and amateur pantomime quality at worst. Then there's the lead, Vincent Price, who, with the right directorial guidance, had the ability to restrain his thespian excesses and convey a compelling air of lethal menace, as anyone who has seen Witchfinder General can attest. He also had a flair for self-aware self-parody and comedy, which the Raven Comedy of Terrors and the Dr. Phibes films effectively showcased. There is none of that restraint or talent on show here. He goes for lazy eye-rolling theatrics and layers of thickly sliced hammy overkill. One might argue that he's aimed for a larger-than-life portrayal, but his overacting is of such seemingly deliberate intensity it is occasionally startling. I get the impression this was not a happy production for him, and I think this shows quite clearly on screen. I wouldn't claim it to be his worst screen acting performance, but it's not that far from it. Banshee is peppered with anomalies. The title, for one. Not only does it have nothing to do with Edgar Allan Poe, the film has nothing to do with banshees. A howling wolf or dog is not synonymous with portents of impending familial death in folklore or mythology. It's incongruous. What the fuck is a German witch doing in England in the 1500s? Why would she be there? How did she get there? It's incongruous. What's the significance of Roderick's amulet? No one knows. Not even Roderick. It's commented on, discussed, but never explained. How does a piebald rabbit turn into a grey rabbit and back again? Is this witchcraft or a continuity error? Why do the female witches have metal fillings in their teeth, visible when they scream? Why is the folk song that grinning, sleazy minstrel sings in the pub so goddamned atrocious? This is a careless and shoddy piece of work, and if it had been a slightly better film with a few more elements to recommend it, the minor inconsistencies alone wouldn't be such major irritations. There must be some good points though, right? Well, the stylized intro credits animations are by Terry Gilliam and very reminiscent of his work with Monty Python. The eye-rolling cartoon wolf at least indicates someone had a sense of humour. For something made on a low budget, the set design is okay. The score by William Josephs is a standard period horror flick orchestral composition and does a reasonable job. No credit for cinematography, just lighting, cameraman, art director and camera operator. But visually it's passably functional, rather than creative or artistic in any way. The torture, sadism and sexual abuse is perpetrated by men and the victims are women, which is probably a realistic reflection of the historical period. It's not graphic or explicit, but neither does it have the power to shock or thought-provoke or make meaningful socio-political observations in the way that Witchfinder General does. There's some novelty value in the appearance of Elizabeth Bergner, who was Oscar nominated for Best Actress back in 1935. She hadn't appeared in an English-speaking film for 30 years, and she chose this for a comeback. She'd have been better served leaving it another 30 years at least. Hilary Dwyer, who must have been under contract to AIP at the time, is gorgeous and provides the most compelling visual content on show. She's always worth looking at. As for the frequent bodice removal and BAP exposure, at least it's a distraction from the real horrors of the narrative and the acting. Cry of the Banshee was not sold as the substandard werewolf flick it ultimately was. It takes a punt of legitimacy by association with Edgar Allan Poe, stealing from superior Corman movies such as Mask of the Red Death, and trying to be Witchfinder General with supernatural overtones. Cheap, lazy and unsatisfying, much like a night out with me. Difference is, I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. If any of this makes you want to watch it, first, really? Second, don't come crying to me, Banshee or not. You won't get any sympathy for you or the devil. Thank you for your time and attention. Massively appreciated. If you liked, hit like. If you didn't, hit didn't. If you feel so inclined, subscribe. Can't have too many of those. Or leave a comment. Can't have too many of those either. This is not the end, beautiful friend. Threat of the day. Ciao, pilgrims.